Okay, so when you think about what really shaped human history, what pops into your head? Is it the big battles, the rise and fall of these massive empires? Well, what if I told you the real story, it wasn't written in blood, it was written on receipts? That the most powerful force in history wasn't the sword, it was something way more fundamental, trade. Let's get into it.
So check this out. This isn't just some dusty old quote. This is a real deal complaint, basically a frustrated tweet from 2,000 years ago. It's from this Roman historian, Pliny the Elder, and he's literally watching the treasury of the most powerful empire on earth just hemorrhage cash. And for what? For a shimmering fabric that was all the rage on the streets of Rome. And that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a moth from China, well, the silk it made anyway, how did it threaten to bankrupt the entire Roman Empire? I mean, come on. The answer is this absolutely wild story that stretches across continents, and it reveals that the most important things we've ever traded have always been invisible. And this right here is the whole point. This is our big idea. We always give the credit to the conquerors, the kings and generals for building our world, but the real work? That was done by merchants, by caravan leaders, and by sailors. It was their scales, weighing out goods from far-off lands, that actually balanced the world and drew the very first map of human connection.
All right, so to see how this all got started, we've got to go way, way back. I'm talking before the internet, before phones, heck, before anyone even wrote anything down. We're going back to that first moment when humanity realized, hey, maybe that stranger is more valuable as a customer than as an enemy. And that, right there, that was the birth of the world's very first social network.
So what's so cool about this is that it shows how our single greatest intellectual achievement was born from, well, a bookkeeping problem. Seriously, in ancient Samaria in the city of Uruk, they were basically drowning in grain, but they needed stuff like wood and metal from far away. To manage all those trades, human memory it wasn't going to cut it. So to keep track of who owed who what, scribes started pressing marks into clay. And just like that, a simple need to balance the books gave birth to writing. Commerce literally created recorded history. How wild is that? Okay, let's keep going. We've connected villages, right? Now it was time to connect entire civilizations. And to do that, you had to cross the most hostile places on Earth, the great deserts. These were the highways of sand. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. I mean, sure, the visible cargo was amazing. You had frankincense that was literally worth its weight in gold, you had salt, which was essential for life, and just unimaginable amounts of gold. But the invisible cargo, that's what really changed everything. You've got Greek architectural ideas traveling to Arabia, Islamic scholarship blooming in Timbuktu, and enough gold moving around to completely reshape the global economy. And the perfect symbol for all of this has got to be Petra. The Nabateans, they totally mastered the desert. And right in the middle of their network, they carved this absolutely breathtaking city straight into the rose-red cliffs. It was basically the world's greatest toll booth. All that wealth from the incense trade flowed right through here. And with the money came ideas. That's why Petra's most famous building, the Treasury, looks like someone dropped a Greek temple right in the middle of the Arabian desert. It is a monument built by trade. Okay, but if you really want to grasp the sheer scale of the other huge desert trade, the trans-Saharan route, just look at this number, 60,000. In 1324, the emperor of Mali, a guy named Mansa Musa, went on a pilgrimage, and his caravan, it was so enormous, so ridiculously loaded with West African gold, that it wasn't really a caravan, it was more like a moving city made of pure wealth. So what happens when that much gold suddenly floods a major market like Cairo? Well, Mansa Musa, he just gave so much of it away, to the poor, to merchants, to local leaders, that he single-handedly crashed the Egyptian economy. This chart shows it all. The value of gold just plummeted, and it stayed that way for over a decade. That's the power of those highways of sand. All right, from the deserts, let's turn to probably the most famous trade network in all of history, the Silk Road. And just like with the deserts, the most important things it carried were the things you could never pack on a camel. This is all about the invisible cargo.
Look, everyone knows the Silk Road was about, silk. And yeah, for sure. Silk, these powerful heavenly horses from Central Asia, Roman glassware, all that stuff moved along these routes. But the truly world-changing exports, they were ideas, like how to make paper, entire belief systems like Buddhism, and, on the darker side of things, devastating diseases like the plague.
I mean, just think about the impact of these three things for a second. The secret of how to make paper travels west. Without that,
The Islamic Golden Age, the European Renaissance, probably don't happen, at least not in the same way. Then you've got Buddhist monks hitching rides with merchants, and suddenly a new religion sweeps across all of Asia. And then there's disease. The plagues that traveled these same routes connected the world's immune systems for the very first time, and the results were absolutely catastrophic. This wasn't just a road, it was a biological and ideological superhighway.
But hey, trade wasn't just happening on land. There was an even bigger, more widespread network operating out on the high seas. And it was all thanks to a discovery that let sailors finally leave the coast behind and literally ride the wind.
The secret? It was the monsoon winds. It was brilliant. For half the year, the winds blew reliably one way, from Africa to India. For the other half, they blew right back. It was like a predictable natural engine, a giant breath of the earth that turned the entire Indian Ocean into one massive connected marketplace. It was the world's first true global maritime highway.
And what do you know? We see the exact same pattern here. The visible stuff was exotic and valuable. Spices like pepper and cloves that would literally launch the age of discovery, timber, cotton. But the invisible cargo that sailed on those same winds, it was revolutionary. We're talking about a new number, new languages like Swahili, which is this beautiful blend of Arabic and Bantu, and the spread of Islam all the way to Indonesia, which is now the world's most populous Muslim country. And of all the things ever traded, this little guy right here might just be the most important concept humanity ever exchanged. Not an object, but an idea, the number 0. Arab traders picked it up from Indian mathematicians they met in the spice ports.
So why is that such a big deal? Well, because without the concept of 0 and the base 10 system that it enables, you can't have advanced algebra, you can't have calculus, and you absolutely 100% cannot have binary code. Every single piece of digital technology you are using right now works because centuries ago, Arab merchants trading for pepper picked up a mathematical idea in India.
Okay, so we've seen how these ancient networks stitched together entire continents through deserts and across oceans. Now let's bring it all home and tie these invisible threads to our own hyper-connected world today. When you look at a timeline like this, you realize this is not a new thing. For thousands and thousands of years, from the very first trades of obsidian glass to the great medieval networks, we have been relentlessly weaving ourselves together. This desire to connect, to trade, it's one of the oldest human stories there is. And this, I think, is the perfect image to think about. We see our globalized world as this totally modern invention, right? But it's not. The fiber optic cables that carry our data across the ocean floor at the speed of light, they're often laid along the exact same sea lanes that ancient dhows sailed on, following those same monsoon winds. Our internet is literally following the ghosts of the spice trade.
So, in the end, what does all this tell us? It tells us that our ancestors figured something out. They learned that connecting with strangers, exchanging not just goods but ideas, creates incredible value. It built the world we live in, which, in our age of instant, total connection, leaves us with one last question to chew on. Beyond the stuff we buy online, what's the invisible cargo we're trading today? What are the ideas, the beliefs, and the unforeseen consequences that are moving along the invisible threads of our own time?
Please like and subscribe.